The 2024 NFL schedule is now out, which means it's the perfect time to speculate about each and every team's record of this upcoming season. So naturally, we'll do precisely that, starting with the Arizona Cardinals at 6-11. They won 4 games last year, so it's not like they can get much worse. I think they'll be way more competitive than most people think, but given the roster and the division they play in, I think 6 wins is very reasonable for them. On to the Atlanta Falcons, 11-6. Kirk Cousins, as well as the other additions this team made, should be more than enough to secure a playoff spot. I think they have the potential to win their division altogether, but it's way easier said than done, so we'll have to wait and see. Now for the Baltimore Ravens, 12-5. This is one of the best rosters in the NFL, so of course I have them winning a very comfortable number of games. They may still struggle with some ones due to how tough their division is, but if everything works out smoothly, they should be fighting for the top seed of the AFC once again. Moving on, the Buffalo Bills get a 9-8 record. I think they lost so many players that it will be tough for them to win as many games as last year. However, as long as Josh Allen is under center, everything is possible for this squad, and it wouldn't surprise anyone if they went on to win their division. Up next are the Carolina Panthers at 4-13. This is literally double the amount of wins they got last year, and it's a very reasonable prediction. I think they slightly improved, but nothing fancy, so chances are they'll spend another season at the bottom of the NFC. On to the Chicago Bears, 9-8. I think they'll probably have a slow start to their season as Caleb Williams gets comfortable, but once he does and enters in the rhythm, this team definitely has the talent to fight for a spot in the playoffs for sure. Now for the Cincinnati Bengals, 11-6. They are a really good team despite losing a couple of good players in the offseason. If they manage to stay healthy, they should get right back in the playoffs, and 11 wins seems very logical in my opinion. Moving on are the Cleveland Browns at 9-8. I think it's fair to say they are the worst team in the AFC North, even if they are playoff caliber one. They are a really good team, but I think they'll ultimately get stuck in a position to barely get into the playoffs or miss them altogether. On to the Dallas Cowboys, 11-6. It's not like they lost that many players, but they didn't really make a lot of positive changes either. However, this team is solid, playoffs are nearly a guarantee, and I think they will be for sure in the fight for the division once again next season. Up next are the Denver Broncos, sitting at 5-12. They just completely changed their team this offseason, and not necessarily in a good way. There's reason to believe they'll be the worst team in the division next season, so it also makes sense to me if they finish with just 5 wins. Now for the Detroit Lions, 13-4. This is an incredibly good team, so of course they'll fight for the number 1 seed in the NFC. I have them winning 13 games next season, and it honestly wouldn't be surprising if they were to win even a couple more. On to the Green Bay Packers, 11-6. The potential this team has is out of this world, so much they could even compete for the division crown right away. I think they are way better than some people think, and I have them getting comfortable into the playoffs next season. Moving on are the Houston Texans at 11-6. I think they may drop a couple of divisional games and their schedule isn't particularly easy. However, this team should make the playoffs without much trouble, and they even have the potential to maybe win the AFC, so watch out. On to the Indianapolis Colts, 9-8. I think they have the talent to get into the playoffs, but their schedule isn't doing them any particular favors. However, they'll probably snag a winning record and potentially make some noise later in the season. Moving on are the Jacksonville Jaguars, sitting at 7-10. I know this is a very low record for them, but I just don't see them pulling through, especially when they'll probably finish with a losing record within the division. However, I've been wrong before, so we shall see what happens. Now for the Kansas City Chiefs, 12-5. I think this is a very reasonable record given their free agency and draft movements. They'll certainly win their division, but just as last season, I don't think they'll have a very smooth path towards the number 1 seed. Up next are the Las Vegas Raiders, sitting at 6-11. This is really just a bridge year for them, so no need to even really try. They'll definitely win a couple of games, mainly within the division, but I don't think this team will be very relevant in 2024 outside of maybe a couple of upsets. On to the LA Chargers, 4-13. I'm aware this is a very risky prediction. I mean no hate, I really don't, but seeing their schedule, it's hard for me to imagine them winning a lot more games. I really hope they prove me wrong, but that's my most honest take. Up next are the LA Rams with a 9-8 record. This team has the potential to win way more games than this, I definitely recognize that. However, their schedule isn't particularly easy, and nor is the division, so I have them as a wildcard team at best. Moving on are the Miami Dolphins, sitting at 9-8. They'll probably slightly regress, but I wouldn't say they'll drop out of the playoffs altogether. I think they could manage to win their division even with this low of a record, so it isn't terrible. Now for the Minnesota Vikings, Vikings 5-12. This isn't a bad roster, but they are easily in the worst situation in the NFC North and potentially starting a rookie quarterback. No hate towards them, but their situation just leads me to believe it's about to be a tough season for them. On to the New England Patriots 3-14. I think this is the worst roster in the NFL, and well, their division isn't really an easy one. They could potentially win some more games, but it's hard for me to believe they'll get near a winning record. Up next are the New Orleans Saints with a 9-8 record. They didn't improve much in the offseason, so it's hard for me to imagine them fighting for the division. But still, they could very well get near a winning record and play spoiler later in the season. Moving on, the New York Giants get a 4-13 record. They are in a terrible situation, and they didn't really improve that much if you think about it. They could very well prove me wrong, but sadly, I don't see them winning a whole lot of games next season. Now for the New York Jets, 9-8. I don't buy the hype of this being a Super Bowl team. I believe they still lack a lot of culture and overall results for me to believe that. However, they are definitely in a really good position to fight for the division, so let's see how they do. On to the Philadelphia Eagles, 12-5. I think they may lose a couple of close games, but overall, they should have a relatively dominant season. This is a strong team, and I would say they arguably improved in the offseason. Now for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 11-6. Despite them having an incredibly tough schedule, they improved a whole lot during the offseason, so that balances it out. They'll get a winning record as they always do, and I think this team could very well win a playoff game if they stay healthy. On to the San Francisco 49ers, 14-3. I don't think the Super Bowl hangover will be too harsh on them, so I'll keep the high hopes. This is an insanely good team, and they are actually favored in every single game next season, so gotta ride with them here. Moving on are the Seattle Seahawks with a 10-7 record. This is a much better team than most fans realize, and they'll potentially shock some people. I think they'll be able to grab a playoff spot, and who knows, maybe they'll even manage to make a run in the postseason. Now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 9-8. Getting a winning record would be no surprise, but I personally believe it'll be hard to get anything more. They'll potentially stay in the division fight for a while, but ultimately they don't have a top tier arsenal in order to be a truly competitive team. Up next are the Tennessee Titans sitting at 5-12. They're just in a horrible situation, and I don't think they'll have the roster to overcome it. I hope they get more wins than this, but at the end of the day, I don't see them being a really good team next season. And finally for the Washington Commanders, 4-13. They'll most likely finish with a losing record within their division, and the rest of their games aren't easy to say the least. They are rebuilding, so the future is bright, but 2024 won't be it just yet. And so, let me know down in the comments what you think about your favorite team's record on this upcoming season. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later.